Byzantine Empire. We explain what was the Byzantine Empire and how is the history of this empire. In addition, the territories it comprised and its characteristics. What was the Byzantine Empire? The Byzantine Empire, also known as the Eastern Roman Empire or Byzantium, was a division of the Roman Empire that survived during the Middle Ages, and was located on the eastern shores of the Mediterranean Sea. Its capital was the city of Constantinople, present-day Istanbul, Turkey. Byzantium was a multi-ethnic Christian state, of important cultural, economic and political influence in the world at the time. The Byzantines considered themselves heirs of the Roman Empire, and called themselves Romans. However, over time it was distinguished from the Western Roman Empire by its political, cultural and religious characteristics. The Byzantine Empire existed between 285 and 1453 AD, and during the Middle Ages, it constituted a barrier against the advance of Islam into Europe. The history of Byzantium is often interpreted as a symbol of the growing gulf between Western and Eastern cultures in world history. The Byzantine Empire was established primarily in the present-day territories of Turkey and Greece. During some periods of its history, its extension included the eastern littoral of the Mediterranean Sea, part of Egypt and some regions of Italy. In Byzantium, the Greek term basileus, meaning king, was used to define the emperor. The office was not hereditary, but was defined by a selection procedure involving the Senate, the army, and representatives of the people. With time, this procedure began to have religious traits and the figure of the basileus became divine. On the other hand, Byzantine government was autocratic. The basileus imposed his power over all the affairs of his citizens' lives. He was at the head of the administration and the army, he created the laws and had them put in writing, and he was the supreme judge in the most important matters. For the administration of the empire, the basileus had a group of officials who constituted a hierarchically organized bureaucracy. Economy of the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine economy was based on agricultural production, trade and tax collection. The majority of the population were peasants. The main agricultural products in Byzantium were wheat, legumes, honey, wine and nuts. Byzantium succeeded in developing long-distance trade with different regions of Asia and North Africa. Constantinople, the capital of the empire, became the center of large mercantile networks. The main imported products were wheat, as food for the population of the cities, and silk, as a luxury item for the urban upper classes. In addition, the Byzantine state levied taxes on the majority of the population. Most of the tax revenue was invested in the army. Society of the Byzantine Empire. The population of the empire was varied, and historians estimate that at its peak it reached 34 million inhabitants. The majority of the population were peasants and there were great inequalities in land ownership. Some had small plots of land for cultivation, which allowed them to maintain family subsistence and pay state taxes. Others did not own land and worked in other people's fields in exchange for a salary. In addition, there were large landowners who, over time, incorporated plots of impoverished peasants. Religion in the Byzantine Empire. The majority of the population practiced the Christian religion. Christianity in Byzantium had its particularities and, with time, it became different from Western Christianity, whose center of power was Rome. In Byzantium there was a dispute between different currents of religious interpretation. Most churches were decorated with images depicting Christ, the Virgin and the saints in biblical scenes. At the beginning of the 8th century AD, a group of believers, known as iconoclasts, began to oppose the representation of religious images because they considered it a pagan practice. Between 720 and 843 AD, the Byzantine emperors adopted the iconoclastic trend. They banned and destroyed religious representations and replaced them with crosses. However, in the middle of the 9th century, the use of religious representations was again imposed. On the other hand, around the 11th century, the Great Schism occurred within the Christian Church, and the Eastern and Western churches became separate institutions. The Byzantine Church acquired the name of Orthodox Church. The Byzantines considered that they followed the Christian doctrine more faithfully than the Western Christians. Although the difference between the two churches was based on questions of doctrine, i.e., how to interpret and practice the Christian faith, the reasons for the separation were eminently political. Origin of the Byzantine Empire. At the end of the 3rd century, faced with the continuing political and economic crisis of the Roman Empire, Emperor Diocletian decided to divide the empire into two parts, to facilitate its control and administration. Each half was governed by an August and a Caesar. This system is known as tetrarchy. This model remained alive until the death of Diocletian and then produced a series of internal wars that were ended by Emperor Constantine I, who unified both halves of the empire and declared Byzantium as the new capital, New Rome, it was called, but it was popularly known as Constantinopolis, the city of Constantine. In 395 AD, at the death of Theodosius I, the empire was divided again. Each of his sons inherited a part. Flavius Honorius ruled over the Western Empire, with its capital in Rome, and Arcadius ruled over the Eastern Empire, with its capital in Byzantium. In 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire succumbed to the attack of the Germanic tribes and the capture of the city of Rome. However, the Eastern Roman Empire continued to maintain its political unity, and its history lasted almost 1,000 years more, until its conquest by the Ottoman Empire in 1453 AD. Reign of Justinian. The apogee of the Byzantine Empire occurred during the reign of Justinian I, in the 6th century. The victory over the Persians on the eastern frontier of the empire allowed Byzantium to undertake a campaign to recover the territories of the former Roman Empire which, after its disintegration, were now divided among various Germanic kingdoms. Thus, the Byzantine Empire conquered the Mediterranean coasts of North Africa, Italy and southern Spain. During this period there was a cultural splendor, the best example of which is the Temple of Hagia Sophia, erected in Byzantium as a symbol of the imperial Renaissance. However, the war efforts took their toll and plunged the empire into a century of economic crisis and plague that wiped out a third of Constantinople's population. Border instability. The 6th and 7th centuries AD were times of crisis for the Eastern Roman Empire, besieged on multiple frontiers by various enemies. The Persians resumed their struggle in the east, the Bulgars and Slavs did the same in the north, and Islam conquered in the Middle East the richest territories of the empire, Syria, Palestine and Egypt. The emperors succeeded each other on the throne without managing to re-establish the imperial fortress, and ceded to the barbarian conquests the Tiber River and almost all of Italy, and even had to defend Constantinople from the siege of the Avars and the Slavs in 626 AD. In addition, there were different internal conflicts, especially linked to the religious sphere. Macedonian Renaissance. This period was followed by an important recovery of the empire, ruled by a dynasty of Macedonian kings and characterized by the distancing between Eastern and Western Christianity. During the 11th century, the political influence on religious aspects led to what is known as the Great Schism of Christianity, with the mutual excommunication of Pope Nicholas I and the Patriarch of Constantinople Photius. This brought about the official separation of the Eastern and Western churches. Decline of the Byzantine Empire. At the end of the 13th century AD, the empire entered a process of crisis that culminated in its fall in 1453 AD. Specialists consider that there were different causes that led to the weakening of the Byzantine state. The bureaucratic and tax system led to local landowners accumulating more and more land and peasants losing their small holdings. This empowerment of local landowners weakened their dependence on the emperor and thus their obedience. Large landowners used their power to evade paying taxes and, in turn, impoverished peasants reduced their ability to pay tribute. The low tax collection imposed a lower investment in the imperial army. Faced with pressure from groups of invaders on the frontiers and the development of civil wars over internal power disputes, the weakened imperial army was unable to sustain the emperor's position of power. During the last century of Byzantium, the Ottoman Empire conquered much of its territory. In 1453, the city of Constantinople was besieged for 6 weeks before the Ottoman Turks finally seized it and brought the Byzantine Empire to an end.